Brother Ruckman, could you elaborate on the Book of Jasher that the Bible talks about?
The Book of Jasher. Book of Jasher is a quotation from, I believe, the Book of Joshua. If not the Book of Joshua, I haven't got it marked. But the word means the Book of the Upright, and it's a reference to a supposedly non-canonical book. Where is the reference? Anybody? What is it? Yeah, okay, Joshua 10:13. Okay, here it is. And the sun stood still and the moon stayed, till the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. It's not written in the Book of Jasher. Now you'll find a number of times in the Bible references like this. Like as it's found in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel, the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah. A couple times when they mention these supposedly non-canonical books, they mess up. For example, they'll talk about the book of Enoch. And Enoch wrote, "The Lord cometh with 10,000 of his saints." There's no reference to the book of Enoch anywhere in the New Testament. They're always getting... One of the hardest things in the world to do to read your Bible is to read your Bible with a bad heart. And when you have a bad heart, you seem to be unable to comprehend things that are third grade, fourth grade in English. For example, that quotation about the book of Enoch that people use to prove there was a book of Enoch says nothing about any kind of book at all. What they're quoting in the passage, which is a misquote, and it isn't even there. 14. Enoch also the seventh from Adam prophesied, saying, "The Lord cometh with 10,000 of his saints." There's no book there. That's what he said. But then some fellow sees that, so he writes him a book called the Book of Enoch. And he says, "Oh, he's quoting this book I wrote, you know." Bunk. So just because he says the book of the thing, that doesn't mean it says book, but here it does say book. Now this word Jasher here, this means the upright. So you got to find something written in the book of Jasher, the upright. You're reading it. What's Joshua? That's the Old Testament word for Jesus. And it's that sun and moon standing still. All right, keep your hand right there and come to Habakkuk and watch who it is that shows up when the sun and the moon stand still. Habakkuk. When you find Habakkuk 3, raise your hand. Habakkuk 3. Two fellows back there in the back. One lady. Pastor, a couple ladies, man, lady. Okay, Habakkuk. I just want to see what you've been reading. You know, one time there was a fellow, a great Bible teacher in this country named Donald Great Barnhouse. He wasn't a great Bible teacher, but he was a good Bible teacher. And he had a fellow named Irish fellow with him, one of just laymen in his church, to help him out with his Bible studies once in a while. I forget his name, was something like Mike Hanna or something like that. I got it written at home. But he was always reading his Bible, and when Barnhouse got real biblical, probably bring it to him, they'd talk about it. One day they were riding along on a train together, and the Irishman was over there reading his Bible, and Barnhouse was reading the newspaper. And after about 30 minutes riding, Barnhouse put down his newspaper and said to his buddy, he said, "You know something?" They called him by his name. He said, "I wish I knew the Bible like you know it." And he said, "You never learn it by reading a newspaper." Went right back in his Bible. And you'll never learn it by reading the newspaper. Out of Habakkuk 3. Now, who is this that's showing up here? Verse 13. "Thou wentest forth for the salvation of thy people, Israel, even for salvation with thine anointed." Well, who would that be? Who is God's anointed? It's Christ, the Messiah. "Thou woundest the head." There's Genesis 3. It'll wound your head, you'll bruise his heel. There it is. It's second advent. But what is the second advent? Verse 11. "The sun and the moon stood still in their habitation." Joshua's going to take place again. Joshua's a type of Christ. Lord comes back in Armageddon. What you read in Joshua comes to pass again, fighting against the kings. So when he says the book of Jasher, it can be the book of Joshua. And I'm sure that's what it is. When he says this not written in the book of Joshua, in the book of Jasher, it has to be one of two things. If it's canonical, it has to be Joshua or it has to be Habakkuk. And Habakkuk's written about 1,000 years after Joshua, so I take for granted the reference to Jasher is just another name for the book of Joshua. You say, well, somebody else must have written that in there. Yeah, they must have. But then as far as that goes, look at the end of Joshua and see how somebody had to write this in here. Joshua couldn't have written this. Joshua chapter 24, verse 29. It came to pass after these things that Joshua the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died, and they buried him. He didn't write that. And Israel served the Lord all the days of Joshua. He didn't write that. And all the days of the elders that overlived Joshua. And he didn't write that. So sometimes you have another author making a note in those books. And an author made that note there. When he said he's not written the book of Jasher, he's undoubtedly talking about the book that he's putting it into. Let me show you another case like that. Come to Deuteronomy chapter 34. Who wrote Deuteronomy? Moses. That's clear. Christ quotes it. It said, Moses said, and quotes Deuteronomy. But Moses couldn't have written this. No way in the world. Moses 34. Deuteronomy 34. Moses 34. Deuteronomy 34:5. So Moses, servant of the Lord, died in the land of Moab. And God buried him in the valley. He didn't write that. Said Moses 120 years old when he died. Didn't write that. And the children of Israel wept for Moses 30. He didn't write that. Now who wrote that? Probably Joshua. Put that in there. You say, why? Go back to Joshua 24. And notice how Joshua had access to the books and the law and the stuff. Joshua 24. Joshua 24, 26. 26, there you go. Joshua 24:26. And Joshua wrote these words in the book of the law, Deuteronomy, and took a great stone and set it there on an oath that was by the sanctuary of the Lord. That shows you those things overlap. And because we give the authorship to a book, doesn't mean he's the only author that writes in that book. A good one, we better close here, but I'll show you a good one. Come back to Genesis and look at Abraham chasing the king that came to fight against him. Genesis 14. He's going after the kings there to fight him. Genesis 14. Genesis 14, verse 14. When Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his own servants born in his home, 318, and pursued them to Dan. Dan. That's Abraham. Where did Dan come from? He one of Jacob's sons. Where did Jacob come from? Isaac. Where did Isaac come from? Abraham. What's Abraham doing going to Dan? There ain't no Dan around there. See that thing? You get that stuff in that Bible. I'm telling you, man, the book is put together like you wouldn't believe. It's put together like a human body. These Bereans, they're shallow. They're not deep Bible students. Now take that Dan right there. Now who wrote Genesis? Did Moses know where Dan was? Now when he died, Joshua hadn't divided the land yet. Nobody knew where Dan was. And he said, Moses lifted his eyes and saw the land from Beersheba to Dan. So God had to show that to Moses. And whoever wrote that thing in the end of Moses either lived to see the time of Joshua where the land was divided, or else God had to give him direct revelation. That's what's going on there. So the answer to that thing is, if I was asked about the book of Jasher, I'd say the book of Jasher is another name for the book of Joshua, because it means the book of the upright, and Joshua's upright, and it refers to Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ is upright, and so I'll leave it there with that. All right, brother. Come ahead. Not enough for one night. Nothing like a Bible to clear up a college education.